So every once in a while, we come across someone who is truly extraordinary, someone who's blazed his or her own trail, cut through the clutter. Folks like these could be, potentially successful in a worldly sense, like business leaders, like entrepreneurs, like sportsmen, like authors. But some of them may also be working outside of the limelight: teachers, doctors, soldiers, social workers, and so on. So over the last 25 years, in my various roles as a business leader, as an investor, as an author, and as a leadership coach, I've had the fortune of working closely with many people who are extraordinary and who've created or done something extraordinary. And that's given me a chance to reflect on what makes them truly extraordinary. So there's this popular saying which goes, "A genius is born, not made." And any of you who've watched Sachin Tendulkar's straight drive will know what that means, right? Or if you've read Warren Buffett's letters, or if you've seen a Martin Scorsese movie, or listened to Rahman's music, or Rafi's songs, or read Kazuo Ishiguro's books. It all seems magical, ethereal, out of reach. And so we assume that extraordinary people are born extraordinary. And that is that. And we go back to the humdrum of our daily grind. But there are lots of people who've actually gone on to do extraordinary things much later in their lives. Gandhiji, for instance, he actually set foot back in India from South Africa at the age of 45. So while he was profoundly influenced by whatever happened in South Africa, the truth is that a lot of what we associate with Gandhiji's greatness actually happened to him after that age. Colonel Sanders, the founder of KFC, he actually started the company in his mid-60s. And before that, he had a string of business failures. Another fast food company, McDonald's, Ray Kroc, the force behind McDonald's, began his association with the company in his 50s. Grandma Moses, she's a famous American folk artist. She started painting at the age of 78. Closer home, Captain Nair of Leela Hotels, he started the company in his 60s. So suffice it to say that it may not just have to do with being a childhood prodigy. Talent is surely important, but there are other factors at play. What could these other factors be? Could it be mindset? Could it be experiences? Could it be life choices? And that leads us to an interesting thought. What if each one of us has the spark to be extraordinary? Is that possible? Subliminally, each of us actually knows the answer to this question. Over the last many years, in my leadership coaching sessions, I find one common recurring theme across almost every single person that I coach. Each of them feels that they are capable of much more. Each of them feels there are hidden potentialities within them, hidden dimensions waiting to be unlocked, hidden, things waiting to be explored. I was no different. The first 15 years of my career was with various global investment banks and private equity firms. And throughout that period, I felt like something was missing, that there was some part to me which would potentially complete the puzzle. And then, I went on to find my passion and my purpose, and I'll talk more about that later. But suffice it to say that each one of us subliminally knows that we are capable of much more. So can we be truly extraordinary? Well, for that, we'll have to understand what makes people extraordinary. But before we do that, we need to overcome 4 major roadblocks. What are these roadblocks? Well, the first roadblock is what we call externalizing. Many of us tend to blame things on the outside world for what happens to us. And externalizing happens in 2 ways. We think that external events, external circumstances determine our life. And the second way is that we think that external events determine our happiness. And in my leadership coaching sessions, I come across this a lot. We see people commonly talking about, the various problems that they have: bad bosses, demanding clients, unreasonable deadlines, financial constraints, personal circumstances, and so on. And there is some truth to each of these. And they somehow feel that there is this mythical thing, the next job or the next promotion or the next pay raise or maybe the next round of funding, and that will solve all their problems miraculously. It takes some time for people to realize that the route to finding happiness and fulfillment lies within yourself. And you always have a choice which can potentially determine how things shape up. But even when you can't control external circumstances, you can still control the way you react or respond to them. Once people realize this and move to this internal locus of control, this is a major breakthrough, an aha moment. And that's when you've overcome the first big roadblock. But why is it so tempting to externalize? It's tempting because somewhere, if we stop externalizing, we are solely responsible for our own fate. We have to take ownership for ourselves. And if we fail, we have nobody else to blame. And that's scary. That's scary. But if you overcome this urge to externalize, a whole world of possibilities awaits you. So coming back to the original question, right? What is this secret sauce, this master key that extraordinary people have? Well, before we can get to that, we need to get to the second roadblock. And the second roadblock is short-term thinking. Many of us actually, think we need to optimize our happiness all the time. Amazon founder Jeff Bezos once asked the legendary investor Warren Buffett, "You're the second richest man in the world. Your methodology is so simple. Why doesn't everybody copy it?" And apparently Warren Buffett's answer was, because nobody wants to get rich slow. Nobody wants to get rich slow. So in my early years of my career, when I worked with the global investment banks, our clients used to be global financial services powerhouses, hedge funds and so on. And most of these clients, in fact, almost all the time, used to focus exclusively on short-term factors. What's the stock price going to do next week? What are the results going to be like? What's the budget going to be like? What's the monsoon going to be like? Very rarely would we get asked questions about a company's 5 or 10-year prospects. And therein lies the edge for somebody who plays a long-term game. Often the best investments are actually hidden in plain sight. If you'd invested in an Apple or an HDFC Bank 15 years ago, you would have made a far better compounded return than a series of short-term speculative investments. So that's the power of playing the long-term game. Same is something I observe in entrepreneurship as well. I see a lot of startup founders, and we're in Bangalore, right? So a lot of startup founders play the game of trying to raise venture capital funding at high valuations. And in this process, they focus exclusively on short-term metrics. They sacrifice profitability and create a toxic hustle culture within the firm. Not surprisingly, most startups fail. But so why are we attracted towards these short-term, why do we play this short-term game? Well, the reason is quite simple. We play this game because we are not sure of ourselves. We are constantly looking for validation. So, when I started writing my first book, Kalkut, it took a good 4 years, 2 years of plotting and planning and 2 years of actually writing. The most difficult part of those 4 years was the fact that I had no external validation for whether I was a good writer or not. I'd spent time in corporate jobs till then. I'd never written a book. It's very difficult to get over this urge for external validation. But once we get over it, we can unlock the power of compounding. You compound not just your wealth, you compound your mastery over the subject, you compound your reputation. And that lays the base for doing something truly extraordinary. So that brings us to the third roadblock, not being self-aware. There is this saying, I don't know if you guys have heard it, which goes, if you judge a fish by its ability to climb trees, it's going to go through its whole life believing that it's stupid. And yet, most of us actually go through life just like the fish which is trying to climb a tree. We are not aware of our gifts and our purpose. So in effect, we are playing someone else's game. So how do you find your gifts and your purpose? Well, you have to explore a lot. You have to experiment a lot. You have to meet people, do different things. But importantly, also intersperse this activity with periods of self-reflection. And many of you in a few years would be pursuing different careers. It's important that you do a lot externally, be curious, but it's equally important to understand yourself. My own journey, after the 15 odd years of being in the investments world, I had a 2-year period when I took about 300 odd flights over 2 years. And in those flights, I was able to switch off from emails and office phone calls and all that. And I was able to tune into my inner compass. And when I tuned into my inner compass, I discovered my purpose and my passion. I decided to focus more on my writing. I decided to focus more on my mindfulness practice. And I decided to set up my leadership coaching firm and step off the conventional corporate career path. But it's not easy. Elon Musk, the founder of Tesla, has said that starting a company is like staring into the abyss and eating glass. It's difficult. But if you're doing something that is in tune with your gifts and your purpose, you're going to be able to sustain it. You will not run out of steam. That brings us to the fourth roadblock, self-doubt, the fear of failure. So what does that mean? When most of us take up a new venture or a new project, we are assailed by this desire for perfection. Many of us call ourselves perfectionists. Often, this perfectionism is actually our fear of failure. When I started writing my first book, I had this voice inside me, this inner critic, constantly judging my work, constantly criticizing my work, asking me to limit my ambitions. And somewhere I realized that this inner critic, this perfectionist, is actually my fear of failure. And once you get over the fear of failure, you unlock your reserves of creativity. Mark Zuckerberg has said that the path to success is to give yourself the freedom to fail. Ice hockey star Wayne Gretzky has put it differently. He said, you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. So the next time you embark on a creative project or set up a venture, do yourself a favor, give yourself the freedom to fail. Your project will acquire wings. So that brings us back to the original question. What makes extraordinary people extraordinary? What is their secret sauce, their master key? And once you've overcome these four roadblocks, once you're no longer externalizing, once you're no longer playing the short-term game, once you're self-aware, and once you're no longer afraid of failure, this master key is then in a position to reveal itself to you. You're then in a position to get into what is known as the state of flow, getting into the zone. Many of us actually are familiar with this. When you're in the middle of a game of tennis, or when you're in the middle of reading a book, or sometimes when you're in the middle of work, you'll come across a point where everything seems effortless. Things seem to happen by themselves. It's like you're in your element. That's the state of flow. But what is more important is that once you've learned to overcome these four roadblocks, this state of flow hones itself and directs itself towards your purpose. That is the secret sauce. That is the master key. Swami Vivekananda has actually said, and to paraphrase him, take up one idea, make that idea your life, live it, breathe it, dream it, let every muscle, every nerve in your body live that idea. And to take another analogy from our ancient Indian Advaita Vedanta philosophy, it's like the subject and object merge into each other. The musician becomes one with the music, the batsman becomes one with the ball, the entrepreneur becomes one with the customer, the investor becomes one with the market. That is the secret sauce. That is the master key. This is a state when your left brain, which focuses on logic, and the proverbial right brain, which is driven by intuition, merge into one. This is a state when your subconscious mind, which has got massive potential, is activated. Many of you might have seen that video clip where soccer star Cristiano Ronaldo scores a goal in complete darkness. That's because his subconscious mind is at play. Many scientific discoveries, like Auguste Kekulé, who discovered the structure of benzene, it came to him in a dream. Paul McCartney composed the song yesterday after waking up from a dream. It's because their subconscious mind was at play. When this happens, magic happens. It's like work doesn't drain you anymore, it energizes you. Ideas start coming by themselves. Things start falling in place. Dots start joining themselves. That is the secret sauce. That is the master key. And when you're in this state, you can do extraordinary things. You could make a great movie, compose a great piece of music, do something that impacts communities across the world. Maybe you can devise something that can halve carbon emissions across the world. Maybe you can hit a World Cup winning shot, climb mountains, and so on. That's when you've become truly extraordinary. But more importantly, that's when you realize that you were extraordinary all along. All you needed to do was uncover that potential within yourself. All you needed to do was uncover that potential within yourself. Thank you.